I am Evan Carter, 47 years old, a self-made real estate entrepreneur in Seattle, Washington. I was just removed from my wife's family's annual yacht trip, the Whitmans, without a single explanation, without a call. My name was scratched off the guest list as if I had never existed. But the most painful part wasn't the exclusion, it was how long I convinced myself it was unintentional. I sat at their family dinners, thinking I belonged, only to realize I never truly had a seat. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest video. Every morning I start slowly. A cup of black coffee, brewed in the old machine I haven't bothered to replace, sits on the granite kitchen counter, gleaming with sunlight from the large window overlooking Puget Sound. My father's wristwatch, its face scratched in a few places, still ticks on my wrist. Today Claire, my wife, left early to meet a client, leaving behind a faint trace of perfume and a half-eaten apple on the counter. I settle at the oak desk in the corner of the room, scrolling through my phone out of habit, checking emails and appointments. That's when I saw Sophie Whitman's Instagram post, Claire's niece. A boomerang video, champagne glasses clinking, the sea sparkling, the luxurious white yacht, the horizon in the background. Sophie's caption read, "Whitman family tradition sets sail, can't wait to board." My finger froze. The annual yacht trip, a lavish ritual of the Whitmans that I'd only been invited to twice since marrying Claire. The first time I naively suggested changing the destination, and Isabelle Whitman, Claire's sister, responded with a cold smile, "The family prefers to keep tradition." The second time she seated me next to strangers at a side table, as if I were a nameless guest. I clicked the post, scrolling through the faces. Isabelle with her perfect smile, Claire's mother, Margaret, raising a glass of wine, cousin James with an indifferent expression, and Sophie as cheerful as ever. No me, no Claire. My heart didn't race, but a heavy feeling spread like someone had squeezed my chest. I checked emails, texts, even the Whitman family WhatsApp group where I'd once been added, then quietly removed after a mix-up with seating at a Christmas party. Nothing. No invitation, no notification. I set the phone down, watching the coffee cool. This wasn't the first time I'd been overlooked. Birthdays I only learned about through Instagram. Family brunches I accidentally wasn't invited to. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. They played like a slow-motion film. I used to tell myself I was too sensitive, that the Whitmans were busy, that they didn't mean it. The coffee on the table had gone cold, but I still held it, letting the faint warmth seep into my palm. I stood by the window, looking out at Puget Sound, where small waves glittered under faint sunlight. It pulled me back to the past, to the days I built everything from nothing, to the yacht, the horizon, and to how the Whitman family turned it into their legacy, as if I were just a passerby in my own story. I wasn't born into luxury. My father was a plumber in Tacoma, my mother an elementary school teacher. They taught me that if you want something, you build it. At 20, I started as a real estate agent, driving around Seattle in a beat-up car, trying to sell houses I knew I'd never afford. Those early years, I failed more than I succeeded. Investors looked at me, a young guy with no connections or pedigree, and said things like, "You've got energy, but we need someone stronger." They meant someone with a better background, but no one said it outright. I didn't quit. I worked nights, learned negotiation from library books, and delivered documents myself when staff bailed. Once, I drove across the Tacoma Narrows Bridge at midnight, in the rain, just to deliver a contract on time. 10 years later, I had my own real estate company, small but steady, not the flashy kind with a downtown office, but a team of a few working in an old building near Pike Place Market. When the company started turning a profit, not pocket change, but numbers that made investors who'd rejected me send apologetic emails, I didn't buy a luxury car or an expensive watch. I bought the horizon. That yacht wasn't just a status symbol, it was proof I'd made it, that a guy from Tacoma could stand shoulder to shoulder with those who once looked down on me. The day I signed the check for the yacht, my hand didn't shake. I sat in the maritime company's office, a small room in Marina del Rey, with the smell of sea salt drifting through the window. The representative asked, "What do you want to name it?" I thought of my father, of the times he said, "The horizon is where dreams begin, Evan." So I chose that name. When I brought the contract home, Claire hugged me, her eyes shining with pride. But I did something I'm not sure was right now. I put Claire's name on the ownership papers too, for easier taxes and estate planning, as our accountant said. I thought it would help me fit in with the Whitmans. I was wrong. The Whitmans, with their lavish parties and long-standing traditions, never saw me as one of them. I remember a brunch at Margaret's, Claire's mother, a few months after buying the yacht. Isabelle stood, raised a glass of wine and said, "The horizon is a symbol of the Whitman legacy. It makes our traditions come alive." She looked around the table, her gaze sliding past me like I was a waiter. No one mentioned that I'd paid every cent for it, that I'd worked myself to exhaustion to make it real. Claire squeezed my hand under the table, but she said nothing. Neither did I. I told myself it wasn't worth making a fuss. but moments like that kept piling up bit by bit like water wearing down stone. I thought of Claire, of how she's always caught between me and her family. I love her warmth, the way she laughs when we watch old movies on Saturday nights. But Claire isn't good at confrontation, especially with Isabelle. I'd asked her about times I was left out, like when I wasn't invited to Margaret's 30th anniversary party. She said, "Mom probably forgot. Don't take it to heart." I didn't, or at least I tried not to. But now, standing here with proof in hand, I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I stood at my desk, a folder of papers in hand, the window's light falling on the freshly printed sheets. The email canceling my yacht reservation, with Isabelle Whitman's name in bold, sat on top. Below it was a screenshot of her mistaken text, with my name crossed out and replaced by Nora. I didn't tremble, but in my chest, a heavy feeling was turning into resolve. The Whitmans had tried to erase me from the yacht trip, the yacht, the horizon, I'd sweated to buy. But this time, I wouldn't stay silent. I'd go to Marina del Rey, not to beg for a seat, but to reclaim my place. The cold coffee still sat on the table, but I didn't care. I opened my laptop, checked the email from the yacht company again. The cancellation was sent 3 days ago, with a vague reason, request to adjust guest list. I clicked the attachment, a detailed cabin list. My name was crossed out in red, next to it Nora, confirmed. I printed this too, stacking it with the other documents. The yacht purchase contract with my signature, bank transfer receipts, and an old email from the lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, confirming I'm a legal co-owner with Claire. These papers weren't just evidence, they were truth, something Isabelle couldn't twist, no matter how manipulative she was. I sat down, opened my notebook, and looked at the line I'd written this morning. Observe, don't react yet. It now felt like a reminder. I didn't need to rush, but I couldn't let things slide anymore. I thought of Claire, how she'd react to this. She was at her office, meeting clients all day, and I knew if I told her now, she'd say, "It's probably a misunderstanding, honey. Let me talk to Isabelle." But I'd heard that too many times, and it never led to change. This time, I needed to act before Claire could smooth things over. My phone buzzed, a text from Isabelle. I almost didn't want to read it, but my finger tapped the screen. Short, falsely sweet. "Hi Evan, must have slipped my mind. The yacht trip is full this year. So sorry, hope you can join next time." No explanation, no offer to fix it, just a polite dismissal. I read it again, feeling like I was swallowing a bitter pill. I didn't reply. I didn't trust myself to stay calm if I typed a single word. Instead, I stood, went to the closet, and pulled out a small suitcase. Not the kind for a vacation, no swim trunks or sandals. I packed the documents, each sheet placed carefully, like they were weapons. I didn't know exactly what I'd do in Marina del Rey, but I knew I wouldn't let Isabelle keep writing this story her way. As I closed the suitcase, the front door opened. Claire walked in, hair tied up, still in the navy work dress I love. She smiled, but it faded when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting her bag on the sofa. I hesitated, then decided to speak, my voice calmer than I expected. "Your family's planning the yacht trip. I wasn't invited." Claire frowned, sitting beside me. "What? Mom probably forgot, or Isabelle hasn't updated the list. Let me call and check." I shook my head, took the folder from the table, and placed it in front of her. "It's not a mistake, Claire. Isabelle canceled my spot 3 days ago. She replaced me with Nora, her friend." Claire looked at the documents, flipping through them, her eyes flickering between surprise and unease. "She can't do that," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "There must be some mix-up." I looked at her, a mix of disappointment and familiarity washing over me. "There's no mix-up. This is proof. Isabelle doesn't want me there." Claire opened her mouth, but no words came. She looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of a page. "What are you going to do?" she asked, voice soft. I stood, pulling the suitcase toward the door. "I'm going to Marina del Rey, not to argue, but to show them I don't vanish just because they want me to." Claire stood, grabbing my hand. "Evan, don't make a big deal out of this. Let me talk to Isabelle. I'll fix it." I pulled my hand away, not angry, just firm. "Claire, I've waited too long for you to fix things. This time I'm doing it myself." She didn't say more, just stood there, eyes full of worry. I turned away, feeling like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I returned to the desk, grabbed my notebook, and added a line. "Don't ask permission. Show up. My father once said, if they don't give you a seat, bring your own table." The horizon was my table, and I'd let the Whitmans sit at it too long without acknowledging me. I closed the notebook, looked out at Puget Sound. The sea was calm, but I felt a wave rising inside me. I didn't know what awaited in Marina del Rey, but I knew I wouldn't let Isabelle or anyone in the Whitman family decide my worth anymore. I grabbed the suitcase, checked the documents. Everything was ready. I wasn't going for a vacation. I was going to take back what was mine. I stood on the Marina del Rey dock, the small suitcase trailing behind, its wheels rolling smoothly on the wooden planks. The smell of sea salt mixed with harsh sunlight, and the air here exuded wealth that didn't need to announce itself. I wore a simple navy suit, no tie, no flash, not to impress, but to remind myself this was a battle I'd prepared for long ago. The horizon loomed before me, a gleaming white yacht, its teak deck polished, luxurious interiors hidden behind large glass windows. It was mine, though the Whitmans had tried to make me forget that. I took a deep breath, stepped onto the gangway, ready to face them. The Whitman family was on the main deck, laughter and clinking wine glasses ringing out like a carefully staged performance. Isabelle Whitman, Claire's sister, stood at the center, white dress hugging her frame, hair swept up, chatting with a guest I vaguely recognized from an old party. Claire's mother, Margaret, sat on a cushioned chair, wine glass in hand, her gaze sharp as ever. Cousin James stood nearby, quietly sipping a beer, while Sophie, Claire's niece, snapped photos of the sea with her phone. Claire lingered at the edge of the group, her eyes flicking toward me, but she didn't approach. I didn't pause to wait for her. As I boarded the yacht, the group fell silent. Not an obvious silence, but the subtle kind, where people pretend not to notice but their bodies betray the truth. Isabelle turned, her smile freezing on her lips. Margaret raised an eyebrow, her wine glass halting midair. James coughed softly, looking down. Only Sophie gave a slight smile, as if she knew something the others didn't. I said nothing, just nodded sharply and briefly, then moved past them. My shoes clicked on the teak deck, each step like a drumbeat in my head. A yacht staff member, a tall woman in a navy uniform, approached, bowing slightly. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice clear, echoing across the marina. "The owner has arrived." The word owner landed like a stone in still water. Isabelle spun around, her gaze frozen, her champagne glass tilting slightly, nearly spilling. Margaret set her wine down, lips pursed tightly. Claire looked at me, her eyes wavering between shock and worry. I didn't smile, didn't react, just nodded to the staff. Mr. Larson, who I remembered from signing the yacht's rental contract. "Thank you," I said, voice calm. "Proceed." I crossed the deck, suitcase trailing behind, feeling their stares like daggers in my back. But I didn't look back. I stopped at the railing, gazing at the sea. The water sparkled serene, demanding nothing from me. This was the silence I liked, non-judgmental, unpretentious. Waves lapped gently against the hull, and in that moment, I felt I was exactly where I belonged. Not a guest, not an outsider. The owner, Isabelle, was the first to break the silence. She approached, her voice sweet but sharp as a blade. "Heaven, what a surprise. I thought you were busy, so I didn't expect you'd come." I turned, meeting her eyes directly. "Really? Because the email canceling my spot had your name on it." Isabelle's face paled briefly, but she quickly regained her smile. "Must be a mix-up. You know how guest lists get messy." I didn't reply, just stared, letting the silence speak for me. She turned away, starting a conversation with another guest, her voice slightly higher than usual. I moved through the main deck, past the elegant flower arrangements Isabelle had surely chosen, past chairs arranged like a declaration of hierarchy. I didn't sit. I didn't need to do anything to prove I belonged. I entered the main lounge, where ivory furnishings and warm golden lighting created a perfect Instagram backdrop for Isabelle. Claire finally approached, clutching the hem of her dress. "Evan, you didn't tell me," she whispered, eyes full of worry. "Why didn't you warn me?" I looked at her, not angry, just weary. "I gave you a chance to talk, Claire. You chose silence." She opened her mouth but said nothing. I turned, walking down the side corridor, where another staff member, Tom, who'd worked on the horizon since I bought it, nodded to me. "Good to see you, Mr. Carter," he said, voice low but sincere. I nodded back, feeling like I'd found an unexpected ally. I entered the main lounge, where warm golden lights shone on tables adorned with fresh flowers and silk linens. Isabelle's touch, no doubt. The Whitmans had dispersed, but the air remained heavy, as if everyone was pretending the earlier moment hadn't happened. Isabelle stood in a far corner, talking to Nora, the influencer who'd replaced me on the guest list. She laughed loudly, but her voice was a bit higher than usual, like she was masking unease. Margaret, Claire's mother, sat on a cushioned chair, sipping wine, her gaze sliding past me before quickly shifting away. James, Claire's cousin, stood near the bar, quietly peeling a lemon, as if that were more important than anything else. Only Sophie, Claire's niece, looked at me a bit longer, her eyes curious, as if trying to understand something. Claire approached, clutching her phone tightly. "Evan, we need to talk," she whispered, pulling me to a secluded corner. "You shouldn't have shown up like that." Isabelle she didn't mean it. I looked at her, the familiar disappointment rising. "Claire, it wasn't an accident." Claire pursed her lips, her eyes wavering. "I'll talk to her. Just don't make a big deal out of it." I shook my head, voice low but firm. "I'm not making a big deal. I'm making the truth clear." She said nothing more, just turned away, leaving me with a hollow feeling. I wanted her to stand by me, but I knew I couldn't force it. Soft music played, and I heard Isabelle's voice, sweet and rehearsed from the upper deck. I stepped out, seeing her holding her phone. The sun set a perfect backdrop for her Instagram livestream. "Hello everyone," she said, her smile radiant as if nothing had happened. We're here on the horizon, continuing the Whitman family tradition. Nothing beats being at sea, where we rediscover ourselves and our family values. Legacy, loyalty, love, that's what makes us who we are. I nearly laughed at loyalty. Isabelle went on, her voice smooth as if reading a script. The people here understand what it means to build something lasting. Not just assets, but memories, commitments. I stood at the deck's edge, watching silently. Sophie was nearby, scrolling her phone, but her eyes darted to me, as if waiting to see what I'd do. James, still holding his beer, glanced up, his expression unreadable. Then, like fate, Tom, the longtime yacht staffer, walked by, oblivious or deliberately not to the live stream. "Great to have you on board, Mr. Carter," he said, voice clear and calm. "The owner's return is always a treat." Isabelle's camera didn't catch it, but her face did, a frozen moment, her smile twisting into an awkward curve. Silence enveloped us, broken only by the waves and a glass dropping near the bar. Isabelle tried to recover, her voice trembling slightly. Thanks for watching everyone, see you soon." She hurriedly ended the live stream, her hand shaking as she tapped the screen. I said nothing, just sipped my lemonade, legs crossed, posture relaxed. Sophie looked at me, her lips curling into a small smile. "She didn't see that coming," she whispered, eyes sparkling. I didn't reply, but I knew the live stream comments were exploding. I glanced at my phone, seeing lines like, "Wait, he's the owner? What's going on? Spill the tea, Mr. Carter." Isabelle had wanted to control the narrative, but she'd just lost it. I moved to the side deck, where the air was fresher. Sophie followed, sitting on a chair beside me, still holding her phone. "You know, I always thought Aunt Isabelle was a bit extra," she said, voice low. "But this, cutting you from the list, it's not right." I looked at her, warmth creeping in. "Thanks, Sophie, but I don't need anyone to agree I'm right. I just need them to see the truth." She nodded, as if grasping something deeper. I returned to the railing, gazing at the sea. The sunset painted the water gold, and I felt a strange strength, not anger but clarity. Isabelle could keep playing her part, but I didn't have to join her act. I had the horizon, the truth, and this time I'd let it speak for me. The lights in the horizon's main dining room shimmered, reflecting off crystal glasses and silver cutlery. The long table was draped in white silk, accented with fresh flowers and scented candles. A perfect scene I knew Isabelle Whitman had meticulously crafted to reinforce the Whitman legacy image. The family sat around the table, light laughter and chatter rising. But I sensed the tension beneath the surface, especially after Isabelle's failed livestream. I sat at the table's end, quietly observing, lemonade in hand, waiting for my moment. Tonight, I wasn't just a guest. I was the one who'd make the truth clear. Isabelle stood, raising a glass of wine, her smile dazzling as if nothing had happened. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," she began, her voice sweet, rehearsed. "This trip isn't just a vacation. It's about legacy, the Whitman legacy, built by those who value family, loyalty, and commitment. We're here to carry on our story with those who truly understand its meaning." Her eyes swept the table, deliberately avoiding me, but her words were a veiled jab implying I didn't belong. Nods, sips of wine, and murmurs of agreement followed. Margaret, Claire's mother, gave a slight smile, her gaze sharp as if keeping everything in check. James, Claire's cousin, stared at his plate, avoiding contact. Sophie, across from me, stole a glance, her eyes curious. Claire beside me gripped her napkin tightly, as if sensing what was coming. I waited for the murmurs to fade, then stood, unhurried, my voice calm but cutting. "I'd like to add something to this legacy story." The room fell silent. Isabelle froze, her wine glass halting midair. I took the folder from the chair beside me, placed it on the table, and opened it with deliberate care. "This is a transcript," I said, pulling out a printed sheet, "from a call between Isabelle Whitman and the Whitman family lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, a month ago." I read aloud, voice steady. "Evan isn't family. He shouldn't own a family asset." No one moved. Isabelle's face paled, her smile gone. I went on, placing another sheet on the table. "And this is the purchase contract for the Horizon. The first payment was made by Evan Carter, sole investor, legal co-owner, name listed first." Claire looked at me, her eyes wavering between shock and shame. Margaret cleared her throat as if to interrupt, but I wasn't done. "I'm not saying this to stir up drama," I said, scanning the table. "I'm saying it because I'm tired of being talked about in closed rooms, like I'm not standing right outside. I'm tired of invitations that never come, family photos cropped, contributions conveniently forgotten." I looked straight at Isabelle. "You thought I'd keep quiet, and you were almost right, but not today." Isabelle opened her mouth, but only a stammer came out. "I just wanted to protect the family," she said, voice trembling. "I didn't mean." I cut her off, voice soft but sharp. "You thought I wouldn't show up, and you were wrong." Sophie covered her mouth, hiding a smile. James pushed his chair back, as if to leave but then stopped. Margaret cleared her throat again, her voice firm. "Perhaps we should drop this, Evan. this isn't the time. But another voice rose from the table's end. Mr. Henry, a longtime Whitman family friend I rarely spoke to. No, I think we need to hear it all. I've heard too many different versions of this story. Murmurs spread, eyes shifting from Isabelle to me. Sophie nodded slightly, as if agreeing with Mr. Henry. James looked at me, for the first time that night, his gaze no longer neutral. Claire finally stood, hands trembling but voice steady. Evan's right, she said, looking around the table. I was wrong for staying silent. I let Isabelle and the family hurt him, and I'm sorry. She looked at me, eyes brimming with tears. You deserve to be seen, Evan, and I promise this won't happen again. I nodded, not forgiving outright, but acknowledging her effort. Isabelle sat down, clutching her wine glass, her gaze vacant. She didn't leave the table, but her presence seemed to dissolve. Margaret tried to restore the mood, inviting everyone to try the dessert. A plate of vanilla panna cotta sprinkled with orange zest, but no one touched it. The atmosphere, so carefully orchestrated by Isabelle, had shattered. I gathered the documents, stacking them in the folder with unhurried care. Before leaving the table, I paused, looking around the room. If you want the truth, I said, voice steady, don't ask the loudest person, ask the one with proof. I walked out of the dining room, my shoes clicking on the teak floor, echoing in the silence. On the deck, the sea breeze was cool, and I stood there, hands on the railing, my breathing syncing with the waves. I only felt relief, as if I'd shed a burden I'd carried too long. Isabelle could keep building her version of the story, but not in my name, not on the horizon. Claire had apologized, and though it didn't erase all the hurt, it was a start. I looked at the sea, moonlight glinting on the water. My father once said, bring your own table, Evan. The atmosphere on the yacht had changed. The lively laughter and chatter from before were gone, replaced by whispers behind cabin doors and averted glances. Isabelle didn't reappear that night. I heard she stayed in the lower dining room, alone with her wine glass, staff politely checking in, but no family members approaching. I stepped into the main lounge, where the golden lights still shimmered but no longer felt warm. Sophie, Claire's niece, sat on a cushioned chair, scrolling her phone. She looked up when she saw me, smiling faintly. Uncle Evan, I'm sorry, she said, voice soft but sincere. I didn't know things were that bad. Aunt Isabelle, she always acts like everything's hers. I sat beside her, warmth creeping in. It's okay, Sophie, you don't need to apologize. But thanks for speaking up. She nodded, then hesitated. I'm working on a startup project, about sustainable fashion. Could you look at my plan? I smiled, for the first time that day. Send it to me. We'll talk. James, Claire's cousin, appeared at the lounge door, holding an empty beer glass. He stood there, awkward, as if unsure what to say. I saw her do things like that, he said, voice low. Isabelle, how she controls everything, cuts people out. I just didn't want to get involved. I looked at him, not judging. I get it, James. But sometimes, not choosing is a choice. He nodded, eyes heavy, then turned away. Not an apology, but an acknowledgement. And for me, that was enough. Margaret, Claire's mother, was next. She appeared on the aft deck as I stood watching the sea. She said little, just stood beside me, hands clasped tightly. I didn't see it, she said, voice low, not looking at me. I see it now. I didn't reply, just nodded slowly. Not an apology, but an admission, and for someone like Margaret, who always kept everything under control, it meant more than I expected. Claire found me later, in our shared cabin. She stood at the door, her navy dress now slightly wrinkled, hair loose over her shoulders. Evan, she began, voice trembling. I'm sorry. I let my family hurt you, and I didn't stand by you when you needed me. I looked at her, feeling both pain and lightness. Claire, I didn't want you to choose between me and your family, but I needed you to see what they did. She stepped closer, taking my hand. I see it now, and I promise, from now on, I'll stand with you. I said nothing, just squeezed her hand gently. Not full forgiveness, not yet, but a beginning. The next morning, as I sat in the lounge with a black coffee, my phone buzzed. It was Mr. Reynolds, the Whitman family lawyer. Evan, he said, voice deep and cautious. I want to apologize for considering Isabelle's request. I knew it was wrong, and I should have refused outright. You're the legal owner, on paper and in spirit. I let silence answer for me. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds, I said, then hung up. The waves lapped gently beneath me, as if the ship itself were nodding in agreement. I returned to the lounge, where Sophie was typing on her laptop. She looked up, smiling. I just posted something, she said, turning the screen toward me. A short, sharp article titled, The Man They Tried to Erase, A Lesson in Silence and Ownership. My name was in the final line. Want me to take it down? She asked, voice sincere. I shook my head. Leave it. It's not revenge, it's the truth. The post had spread quickly, with comments from strangers, many sharing how they'd felt like outsiders in their own families. Sophie smiled. Not revenge, she said. It's preserving memory. I stepped onto the deck, looking at the sea. Isabelle still hadn't shown, but I didn't care anymore. Claire, Sophie, even James and Margaret, they were starting to see me, not as an outsider, but as someone who'd built part of this story. I didn't need the Whitmans' approval anymore. I just needed myself. I stood on the terrace of my Seattle home, looking out at Puget Sound, where waves glimmered under the morning sun. The fresh air carried the scent of sea salt, and for the first time in years, I felt at ease, as if I'd finally found my place. The trip on the horizon in Marina del Rey was over, but what I brought back wasn't just a suitcase full of documents or belated acknowledgement from the Whitmans. I brought back a new version of myself, one no longer trying to fit in, but one who knew his worth without needing validation. On a Sunday, I hosted a brunch at home. Not the extravagant kind the Whitmans threw, just a simple meal: scrambled eggs, toast, fresh strawberries, and fragrant coffee. I didn't invite the whole Whitman family, only those who truly mattered. Claire bustled about setting the table, laughing more than I'd seen in months. Sophie arrived, bringing a box of homemade cookies. Ryan, my old college friend who'd supported me through tough days, showed up with his wife and a bottle of wine. No Isabelle, no Margaret, no judgmental glances or unspoken hierarchies, just people who knew how to sit around a table and truly talk. Claire poured coffee, her gaze soft as she looked at me. After the yacht trip, we'd talked more, really listening to each other. She admitted she'd been wrong to let her family hurt me, and I admitted I'd stayed silent too long instead of confronting it. We decided to keep the Horizon's ownership in my name, not to exclude Claire, but to ensure no one could rewrite its story again. We also planned a new trip, just with close ones, Sophie, Ryan, and a few other friends. Not to show off, but to enjoy what I'd built. While cleaning up after brunch, Claire stood beside me at the sink, hands covered in soap suds. "Thank you for not giving up," she said, voice low, "for staying, even when I made it hard." I looked at her, smiling faintly. "I stayed for you, Claire, but also for me." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and in that moment, I knew we'd be okay. I returned to the terrace, coffee in hand, looking out at Puget Sound. I thought of Isabelle, what she might have said if she'd apologized. Maybe she'd blame family pressure, tradition, or wanting to protect the Whitman name. But I didn't need her apology. I'd forgiven, not her, but myself, for the old version of me, who tried to shrink to fit the space others drew. The dining table in my home today wasn't the Whitmans'. It was mine, picked from a second-hand shop, fixed up by my hands, and it bore the mark of someone who learned to claim their place instead of asking for it. Legacy, I realized, starts with small things. A father's advice, a wife's firm grip, a young woman wanting to build her own path. I didn't need the Whitmans to validate my worth. I'd built my table, and those who belonged to it would come, not for blood ties but for spirit. Puget Sound remained quiet, but I felt a new current within me. I'd claimed my space, and this time, it didn't feel like exile, it felt like home. The story of Evan Carter and my wife's sister banned me from family yacht trip. I laughed. When staff said, "Hi aboard, owner," reflects the social and family pressure still present in the U.S. today, especially in affluent circles, where image and status are prized. Evan, a self-made entrepreneur in Seattle, faces subtle exclusion from his wife's family. The Whitmans, who see him as an outsider despite owning the Horizon. Isabelle's manipulation via social media, like her Instagram livestream to bolster the family legacy, mirrors how modern U.S. technology is often used to craft false images. Evan's removal from the guest list, replaced by an influencer like Nora, highlights the preference for appearances and social connections over true value, a common issue in competitive American communities. Evan's journey, from silence to presenting proof at dinner, underscores the power of patience and truth in facing injustice. The lesson is, in an American society that values individualism yet pressures conformity, you don't need others' approval to affirm your worth. As Evan's father said, "Don't fight for a seat, build your own table. Focus on creating personal achievements, like Evan did with his real estate company and yacht. Don't let social media or family pressure obscure your truth. Gather proof, skills, accomplishments, self-respect to stand firm as Evan did against the Whitmans." Ultimately, true legacy, like Evan's simple Seattle brunch, comes from genuine relationships, not shallow recognition. If my story got you thinking about standing up for your worth, hit that subscribe button to catch more journeys like this. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next video, where we'll dive deeper into stories of truth and legacy.